Southport Massacre: How Police Ignored Warnings and Let a Killer Strike. Axel Rudakabana's cold-blooded attack on a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport left Britain reeling as three young girls, 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stancombe, 6-year-old BB King, and 9-year-old Alice de Silva Aguilar were murdered. Excuse me, Aguiar were murdered in what has been described as an act of pure evil. Armed with a kitchen knife he purchased on Amazon, the then 17-year-old slashed and stabbed his way through the class, injuring more than 8 children and 2 adults, and obviously traumatizing everyone else. The act horrified the world and sparked riots that shook Britain. Despite a trail of red flags spanning years, multiple police encounters, and a violent history at school, and his obsession with Adolf Hitler, Genghis Khan, and mass killings, authorities failed to intervene effectively. Chillingly, after his arrest, the teenager bragged about the murders, telling officers that he was glad the children were dead and had intended to kill all 26 in the room. Although he was found in possession of an Al Qaeda training manual and had attempted to make the deadly poison ricin, police did not classify the massacre as a terrorist act, citing his lack of allegiance to a specific ideology. The British government has since launched an urgent review into how repeated warnings, including 3 referrals to Prevent is like the kind of counterterrorism warning program in the UK where you can like report someone. And multiple police visits to his home and his 2019 expulsion for carrying a knife to school were ignored. In the wake of the tragedy, the UK has announced stricter online knife sale regulations, and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has promised a full public inquiry into the catastrophic failings that allowed a known danger to become a child killer. So this okay, so Axel Rukabana has been sentenced to 52 a life term with a minimum of 52 years in prison. So it is likely that he will remain the rest of his life in prison. If he had been 18 at the time of this attack, the sentencing would have been worse. This There is so much to unpack here. And partially, I wish, and I know that things have to be done in due process and in the court of law and stuff, but in this instance, I wish the authorities had been giving us more information that we have now that the trial has concluded. Because this was so painful for the British public, and people are reeling and trying to understand what happened, and when there is silence and no explanation, it is our innate nature to go search for meaning and explanation ourselves. And so we're going to fill in the gaps. And then, even if you go present perhaps more credible information later, it is going to feel like it is lacking in credibility because people have tried so hard to explain it themselves and explain it in their own way that if it doesn't align, they're just not going to believe it, or they're going to be less likely to believe it because it will not make as much sense as what they've already constructed for themselves. And we kind of saw this with the vehicular attack that happened in Germany with the ex-Muslim attacker. People, the explanation that was provided just didn't make a lot of sense. And so the answer has to be that he's actually a secret Muslim jihadi instead of these other reasons of this conspiratorial man. You know what I mean? And so basically, now that the trial has concluded, the sentencing has concluded, we have so much more information about what was going on in Axel Rudakabana's life and the kind of person he was. And when I was digging into this, so many of the details were so shocking. So basically, Axel Rudakabana comes from a Rwandan family. There is lots of rumors about who his parents are and what kind of political connections they have back in Rwanda, and were his grandpa and dad part of like the military and all this stuff. I'm not gonna get into that because it didn't seem super credible. But basically, his family first immigrated to the UK after the Rwandan genocide around the year 2002, I believe. And I think they're of the Tutsi ethnicity. And by all reports, Axel was a pretty normal kid until the age of 13. And then he started to complain of racial bullying, and then he started to bring knives to school. He called the child line to admit that he had murderous thoughts. He carried a knife to school 10 times, and when teachers would find him with this knife, he would ask like, "What should I do if I want to kill someone?" It seemed to have like no insight into why this was like shocking to people. He would be very honest about this. He wouldn't really hide it very well. And basically, it became clear that Axel was autistic and he had issues with rage and he had issues with understanding people and he had issues with fitting in and he was volatile. And his behavior got so bad that he ended up getting expelled from the first school. And then he kinda ever since then ended up bouncing around different school programs for, like it seems I'm not super familiar with the UK system, but it seems kinda like special schools for when kids have really bad behavioral issues. We have those in the US. Um, and but he would still continue his violence and his aggression. He came to school with a hockey stick with some of the names of, like, his teachers or students written on it. He ended up attacking a student and breaking that student's wrist. Teachers always reported that he had no remorse for any of his attacks. He had no remorse for any of his violence. He kept on bringing knives to school. He was arrested for assault, carrying a bladed weapon, and that earned his first criminal conviction. And got his first referral to prevent because a teacher overheard him talking about a mass shooting. And so basically, from a very early age, from the age of at least 13, it became clear that Axel had an absolute obsession with violence, an obsession with grievous violence, gratuitous violence, mass violence. He would be I mean, when I was researching this, I thought, like, every time I would find a new article talking about it, it would reference, like, a new form of extreme violence that he had been upset by. I'm talking mass school shootings in the US. I'm talking genocides. I'm talking slavery. I'm talking dictators. I'm talking torture. I'm talking ISIS videos. I'm talking terrorism. Like, any form of mass and extreme violence that could exist. He seemed to be obsessed with it. He would seek out videos of it on the internet. They talked about how he was watching this kind of stuff constantly. The social workers that ended up working on his case said that he knew an obsessive amount about genocides. He was this child who would never stop talking about genocides, and he would start and be like extremely knowledgeable about it and very detailed about it and be researching like academic papers about it, like just obsessed. And he had particular knowledge
Wow.
over the Rwandan genocide. And he ended up getting referred to Prevent again because he was posting images of Gaddafi all over Instagram. They found him researching the 2017 London Bridge attack. Um, he seemed to be so we covered how he was facing a charge for having Al Qaeda materials, and it seems that he just wanted to like study the violence of Al Qaeda. Like he didn't have an ideology. His ideology was just like extreme violence. And I think that's why he sought out um some terrorist materials. Um and I mean, his parents were having extreme problems with him. There were reports from the neighbors that in the weeks preceding the attack, they had seen police cars at their home like at least 6 times. the parents were having a hard time like struggling with his violence. They were asking the police for help, like, how do we deal with our child when he's acting against us because we're refusing him access to a computer? um he would be in public with a knife. He'd be trying to get on the bus without pain, and then the police would apprehend him. He had knives. um he would just in that instance, he just told the officers, he's like, yeah, I want to stab someone so that the police arrest me, so that when they arrest me, they help me delete videos on TikTok that I put that I now find embarrassing, that I want deleted, but I don't know how to delete them anymore. So maybe if I stab someone and the police arrest me, then they can help me with that. Like, and he would just say that stuff and like have no
What?
insight or remorse into like why people find that weird, find that shocking. He started to um make ricin poison. He and then by the age of 17, you'd like complete he'd fallen through the cracks. Partially this was because of COVID, like he hadn't been attending school, he had no friends, they never saw him leave the house. He had stopped engaging with mental health services. When social workers had worked with him in the past, they wanted the police to be present because of how like volatile he was. um yeah, they insisted on police presence during meetings. And then in the week preceding this attack, he ended up attempting to go to the school, that one of the schools that had suspended him, literally wearing the same clothing that he wore on the day of the attack. And um basically the only reason why it was prevented from him attacking the school that he used to go to, which is emblematic since he was obsessed with school shooters, was that his dad actually stopped him from getting in a taxi on the way there. He was trying to get into a taxi and trying to go there, and his dad like prevented him from going. And that's noteworthy because on the day of the attack in Southport, he followed the exact same pattern. Like, neighbors said that they saw him patrolling around the area like alone at 6 a.m. and they're like, we never see this kid. What the hell is he doing? And then he ended up getting a taxi to go to this event where he attacked these girls. And in my reading about how this was allowed to happen and how the system failed, it was partially because although there's two main things that I took away from what I was reading is that he had been referred to Prevent 3 times, but Prevent was not communicating with local police, and local police did not have access to like his Prevent file. Like only counterterrorism people are supposed to have access to the Prevent file. And so there was a problem there. And the other main problem about why he fell through the cracks is because when he was assessed by Prevent previously, they did not find that he had a consistent ideology. They're like, "Oh, yeah, this kid has really concerning behaviors. He is violent. He is, menacing people. He's been, I mean, obsessed with having knives on him since he was 13, and he's obsessed with all this extreme violence. He's obsessed with any atrocity under the sun, basically, and his detailed knowledge of it." But it didn't have a the only thread was that he was obsessed with atrocity. Like, he didn't seem to be, like, ascribing to Islamism. I mean, he was even obsessed with the IRA. He didn't seem to have, any particular allegiance to, um, what's the word? Like a far right, or maybe like an
He
anti-Semitic.
just wants to kill.
Yeah, like, it didn't seem like, oh, he had an anti-Semitic ideology that was inspiring his violence. Like, he was just obsessed with mass violence and atrocities, and
Yeah.
had been voicing his interest in killing people since he was, like, 13.
Hmm.
And because there wasn't a consistent ideology, they kinda, like, dismissed his case.
Right. So it's fair to say that this is not terrorism. This guy was just insane.
Yeah.
This guy, and it's also fair to say that this is not Islamic.
That's
I
my
mean,
understanding.
I think, yeah, I mean, he did have an ISIS manual, but it doesn't seem like he had it because of the ideological agreements that he had with them. He was just using a manual. He probably had the manual as a how-to guide on, like, oh, these people seem to know what they're talking about and how to carry out such an attack, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
this is neither. And again, but by the way, guys, when we say it's not terrorism, it's not dismissing the how horrifying and how disgusting and how evil it is. Something could be evil, horrifying, and still not meet the definition of terrorism. It could even be worse than many acts of terrorism, but still not be categorized as terrorism, right? So just please understand, when you say that something is not terrorism, it does. You're not dismissing the intensity and the evilness of it. It just doesn't fit the meaning of terrorism. This seems to be more of an mental. Again, when I say a mental illness issue, I don't want to make it seem like mental illness makes you do some. Most mentally ill people don't do stuff like this. A certain type of mental illness maybe that causes people to do such thing. So it's not, again, hashtag not all mentally ill people, but yeah. So this is not Islamic, and it's not terrorism. But again, it's still a failure of the system, though, right?
Oh,
And like
obviously.
it's obviously a huge failure of the system. Yeah.
And I don't know, there's some things I wanna reply to in the chat. So, Dwayne is saying, good breakdown, Susie." Oh, thank you. "Have you seen the analysis that there was a sexual motive behind Axel's massacre?" I have seen no mention of that. Um, what I thought was interesting was some of the victim statements that were given, including the victim statement of the survivor of the attack, who was, the one of the teachers of the dance class. She basically said that we were attacked because we are women and girls, and because we're vulnerable. Like, that's why we were targeted. So, I mean, maybe you could cast that as, like, a sexual motive? I mean, like, sex-based motive? Um, I mean, this human excrement, like, I can't get over this. I'm sorry, I can't get over this. He stabbed BB King 122 times. One of the girls, just one of the girls was stabbed 122 times. I need people to understand, like, the forensic psychology going on here. Like, this kind of attack, there are many the how attacks happen tells you a lot about the psychology of the perpetrator. You know, there are some forms of attack that are very disembodied, they're less personal. For example, a strangulation is a deeply personal, up close, intimate form of violence. To commit a strangulation. So to and stabbing and knife crime falls into that sphere. It is so you have to be so committed to attack again and again and again and again to the level of rage, the level of violence is incomprehensible to me. The psychology of someone who is in such a frenzy that one single victim, not even the other ones, one single victim is stabbed 122 times, a 6-year-old girl. Like, this is a level of mentality that is incomprehensible to me. I just know that it exists, you know what I mean? This is the level of monster that was barely contained beneath the surface of this kid, that all of a sudden it just broke out because he was so obsessed with this violence had such an extreme bloodlust. And I just yeah, Peter is asking, is there any workable treatment against this kind of obsession of violence? I mean, one of the things I can't say on YouTube, but basically, like, I just think these people need to be institutionalized. Just like
Yeah.
throw them in a room and throw away the key. You can't fix this. You literally can't fix this. He had been having issues since he was 13. Because he's so autistic and volatile, there was no getting to him. He would be completely honest and almost childlike in just expressing his motives. He's like, "Well, what should I do if I want to kill someone?" And they like have no remorse and no insight into why that's unacceptable. Like no
How did
empathy.
they? I don't understand how they didn't stop somebody who clearly communicated so many times that he wants to kill somebody. Like, what else? If you can't stop this guy, like, then what the hell? Like, this should have been an. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand how these systems are supposed to work, but it seems like if this guy gets away with murder, then anybody can get away with murder. I mean, this guy was constantly broadcasting his intentions to one day do such a thing.
No, but part of prevents failings was that they were like, "Oh, well, he's neurodivergent and needs to be assessed." And so like we need to figure that out.
I
Dude,
don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
care.
understand. I'm
I
not
don't
an
care,
expert. It just.
like,
Yeah.
what kind of learning disabilities you have or whatever, how neurodiverse you are, like, if you're expressing this kind of shit, like, you need to be put away. I don't care. You know, speaking of I don't know if people know this, but we have, like, a transgender murder cult operating, like, highly autistic transgender murder cult operating across the US right now. Uh, I've been going on a deep dive on that in the past week. So just look up that, by the way. Like, you
Wait.
know,
Wait. What?
yeah.
Say that again. I demand. People are saying I demand an explanation. Amir is saying.
There is a murder cult of committed like seemingly highly autistic ideologically committed transgender people that are committing a string of murders
Can
across the
we
United
can we
States.
cover that? Can we cover that? Can we please cover that? It's ideological enough for us to cover. Yes, let's cover that
I
next
will
week.
I will I will I need to understand a lot more and I don't know how much we can understand, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, let's
Um
cover that next week. I want to see because I think we need to cover that.
yeah, that's been breaking my
Yeah.
brain as of the past few days.
So regarding this story, Steve is saying I don't know if this is regarding saying Armin. He has been attending mosques in uh, Belmarsh prison. At least two witnesses. Okay, I mean, I have attended mosques. I've attended mosques as an ex-Muslim. I've been to mosque when was in Tel Aviv. I went to mosque when I was in
No,
London.
I mean,
I went to mosque when I was Sydney. I mean, I don't know. The guy might have been. I don't know. Maybe he. I mean, you can't. I can't rule anything out. But that's not enough evidence. Maybe he was there just thinking like, "Oh, these Muslims know how to
I've
kill.
seen no
Let me kill."
credible sources talk about this.
Right.
I mean, there were rumors
But
that he
even
had
if
been beaten. There were rumors going around that he had been beaten to a pulp within prison, and then that the authorities came out and said that that's not true. So I wouldn't believe everything you hear. Also, to be
but even if
honest,
he
if even if he does go, it's probably because he just like
right.
appreciates the violence.
That's what I was saying. Maybe he was there with like, oh, these people seem violent enough. Let me see if they have any tips for me. Not because maybe he went there not because of the Islam, but because of guidance on how to commit violence. So we don't know. Like, yeah, maybe it was just like maybe he was just profiling Muslims as properly violent people that I could learn something from. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, in person.
um, Gaijin gave a super chat saying Charles Whitman was a mass deleter and found to have a brain tumor. Would you ever considered AI guided lobotomies with brain implants so they stop? Okay, so the Charles Whitman thing is like such a unique scenario. I could be wrong, but I have never heard of an event like what happened with Charles Whitman happening again with another mass shooter. Um, that was like a very unique and bizarre case. So I don't know if we can like generalize based off of what he did. Um, I believe that was in I forget. I know the details. I can't remember where it happened in the US. Um, so would you ever consider AI guided lobotomies with brain implants so they'd stop?
I mean, we're not experts. I mean, we need to figure out like if the scientific community, if the medical advances. I mean, I would appeal to the experts to that point. If they say whatever they say, if technology gets to a point where they could fix this, and then the medical community says yes, we should go with this, I'm gonna like, well, they know more than I do, so whatever they say. I mean, if they're yeah. So I think like this requires some expertise and knowledge that me and Susie don't have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, at least in the US, we just pump them full of drugs so that they're a zombie. Is there anything wrong with
Yeah, I mean,
just do that?
I, I don't know if like that medical procedure is what we need, but I'm almost certain that humanity at some point is going to get into a place where all form of mental illnesses have cures. All forms of them. Like we're going to get into eventually we're going to get to a place where everybody is mentally the best that they could be. So I think we will get there at some point. Oh, we got a Jean has gave us some chat with celebrating her 11-month membership. Do you want to read this one?
Oops.
Oh,
Jean is saying, I would love Susanna to cover the trans cult. Okay, well, I need to go learn a lot more before I bring it to you guys because I understand the sequence of events, but I do not understand their ideology yet. It seems to be some sort of like offshoot of some kind of rationalism, but it's not like the rationalism that we understand or like would identify with. I don't know. But I know that they're like radical vegans and that I think the transgenderism plays into transhumanism a bit. I'm not entirely sure. I need to understand more. But I if I'm totally open to covering it once I get some clarity.
Carlo is saying in the chat that Armin is stupid. LOL. Just wanted to highlight that. Okay. Oh, let's do the comments that Dee highlighted. Okay, this one.
Yeah, saying it's a shame he wasn't shot by the police on the scene. I mean, I understand why people feel that way. Like there were people calling for him to be hanged, and I'm not even going to say that they're wrong for feeling that way. Um it's but I mean, to be honest, like him not being shot by the police has allowed us to get more answers into why this happened, and I feel like that is important for the survivors and for the parents of
Yeah.
the victims.
I'm actually very happy that he was not shot dead because I mean, this guy needs to be studied, I think. I mean, we have to instead of trying to satisfy our desire for revenge, we have to care more about satisfying our desires for preventing stuff like this happening more. And I know it's difficult not to be, to suppress that need for revenge from somebody who has done something like this. But again, lives of more children being affected by something like this is more important that than us getting happy that this guy got what he deserved. So I'm happy that this guy is now available for studying to understand this more. Right? Let me know if you disagree with that. This one.
Yeah, this person is saying, how come
Oh,
Islam produces so many psychopaths? Based on current information, I do not believe that this was an Islamic attack. I mean, only in the sense that he had admired the violence of Islamic terrorism. He
yeah.
worshipped that. Um,
Yeah, and also Islam doesn't create psychopaths. The problem with Islam is that it actually takes advantage of people who have who are mentally not ill, right? Like Islam doesn't produce psychopaths. Islam convinces people who are mentally not ill to do evil shit. That is why it's such a big problem. I mean, if it was only psychopaths, it wouldn't be that big of a problem because they are such a small percentage of the population. Psychopaths are such a small percentage of population. The fact that it's such a powerful virus to get normal functioning brains to be convinced that something that is evil, that is good, that's why it's such an evil thing. And then this one.
Yeah, saying the girl's family will pay for his life via taxes. And I mean, I understand why this is like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Oh wow. It's a
Mm,
very
like untenable for people. But
yeah.
it is the reality.
Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.